was 17, or rather 16, 17, in what was my final year of school, in sixth form. I really wasn't a fan of the pedagogy, that being the way that they taught, which was to kind of give you all of these facts and then expect you to regurgitate them, there being no critical engagement whatsoever. And I had a catalyst, being my media teacher, also in Year 12, who, me being the annoying student that I am, I would be the only person to put my hand up when she asked us for our interpretation or reading of whatever media piece that she just played us. And I'd give her my answer, and she would tell me that I was wrong. And of course, being who I am, I'd tell her that there's no way that I could be wrong because it was subjective and it was all about how you could rationalise and argue your position or what it meant. But she failed me all through my internals, but then, funnily enough, in my externals, I ended up getting excellences, so that kind of begs a bit of a question of bias. But nonetheless, I decided that I wanted to leave school because I hated it, and I approached the career guidance counsellor person who sat in the office and told them that I wanted to leave school. And she told me there was no way that that could happen, that I had to do Year 13 if I wanted to go to university. So I went home and Googled it and found out that that was not the case, and that there was this thing called discretionary entrance to the University of Auckland.
I guess it's a really lame one, being rad, and that's probably got a lot to do with my teenage years and what I associate to that word, which is just a cooler synonym for cool. I guess it would probably be can't is probably the biggest one, and that sounds really cliche given my new position, but that would simply be just because the thing that frustrates me the most about the politics of the day is that there's a lot of posturing about why things are bad, and there's not all too much vision offered in the alternate. That's obviously why I'm with the Green Party, because I believe that we're doing that. I like having meaningful conversations with people. I know that again sounds really lame, but something which most people probably wouldn't be able to tell from the exterior and from the social media and stuff is that I'm quite an introvert insofar as I don't think I can or could ever be the traditional politician who shakes their hands and kisses the baby and never has a meaningful interaction. For me, I would much rather discuss things in depth and critically analyse things with people, and also talk about their lives. So I find people fascinating. I just like cooking. I'm really not a fan of cooking. My partner Alex does most of that, and he's become a great cook as a result. Probably be my little brother's laugh. So my little brother's name is Ollie. That's what the cafe and art gallery in Mount Eden in Auckland's named after. And he's quite young, and I love my little brother a lot. What is a sound I hate? We used to live in this tiny little shoebox apartment in Auckland, in the CBD, just a little bit up on Simon Street from the University of Auckland, and it had a terrible problem with the pipes, I think because the building was really cheaply built, and randomly at 3 a.m. in the morning every other week you'd get, I can't even fathom what the sound would look like, but I would know it. Damn. Is damn a swear word? Yeah, that's the one I'd use. Well, MP is probably quite an obvious one. When I was a kid, I wanted to be, we had to make CVs for school when I was about, I think it was in year 2, which would make me 6 or 7. And the two things that I put on my CV that I wanted to be were diplomat and skateboarder. No, I'm terrible at skateboarding. I gave it up as soon as I tried it, basically. Well, I guess after I'm dead, I'd like to have done everything that I possibly could to have contributed. I don't think there's any possible more meaningful answer for me than that. In talking about my background in philosophy, I've got quite an appreciation for death, and obviously kind of theorised on nihilism in my late teens. But yeah, no, I've got no grand designs with regard to how I'm remembered. I don't really care. I just like to have done something. I don't really care for popularity. In terms of how I ended up in politics, I'd kind of done all of these random things in business and was in journalism and had my background in law and in philosophy. And I was 4 years into The Wire, which was this current affairs show. And at the end of 2015, I was interviewing who the mainstream media had said were the top 4 frontrunners for the Auckland mayoralty. Now, I've lived in Auckland basically my whole life, and I genuinely do love the city, and I see all of the potential through, all of those kind of weird little business projects that we've been involved in. And I was interviewing Phil Goff, Vic Cronin, John Bellino, and Mark Thomas, and they were using all my questions to talk about their platform and how cool they were. And I was just thoroughly disheartened. And I looked more and more into local government elections and found out that in 2013, voter turnout was 34.7% in Auckland. How the hell can we have a representative democracy when 2/3 of people aren't voting? The system doesn't work. What we've got is, regardless of people's input, the system governs them. So I wanted to try and fix that. And I got more and more frustrated because as a journalist, trying to hold people to account, it didn't seem to be working. Nobody really seemed to care about local government, as sexy as it is. So I was talking to my producer about this, Lillian Hanley, and she suggested that I run for the mayoralty. And it was like, oh, that's really funny, Lillian, that's absolutely ridiculous. And we kind of laughed more about it and thought more about it, and then it was like, actually, why is it ridiculous, actually? I mean, the only barrier to engagement in our democracy in New Zealand is an R18 label. That's literally it. So I looked up the barriers for someone like me to run for the mayoralty, and it was literally that you had to be over the age of 18, you had to live in Auckland, pay $200 for a nomination fee, and get 2 people to nominate you, I suppose, to kind of at least have 2 people in Auckland who didn't think you were crazy. So I got that, and yeah, we decided that we would do it because I was just pissed off. There are all of these really critical problems that you probably hear about way too much in the media for people living in Christchurch, but facing Auckland really magnified with regard to housing and transport in particular, and then a bunch of offshoot issues with regard to homelessness. And I just wanted to do something about it. I don't know, I can't really give you anything more than that. You can ask me about it, I guess, after this. But I thought that the best way to try and engage people was to run a really good campaign and to produce policy that would actually change things.
So I launched this campaign with a video made by my friend Tom, who at the time when we made the video I didn't actually realise that I didn't say that I was running to be mayor. I just said that I loved Auckland and I wanted to have people engaged in the local body election. And we put it up on Facebook, and I expected to get like 100 friends liking my page, but overnight we had like 2,500. And then all of a sudden there was all of this media about this 22-year-old. I've never been so aware of my age in my life. But yeah, that was kind of the angle to begin with. Look at this novelty, youngest person ever to run for the Auckland mayoralty. And yes, totally factual and true, but also there's a lot more depth of my character, I think, than simply being 22. Met another candidate called David Hay and asked him what kind of debates were coming up and whether I could get his contact list for the people who were holding the debates. So I got his contact list and then started emailing people, trying to get them to invite me to debate everybody else. Ended up getting into about 60 debates.
It's not something I've got any, it's not a goal. I mean, it's not in the same way that I wouldn't take anything off the table in terms of potential for areas that I could make change. I won't take it off the table, but it's not something that I imagine or dream of. Anger. And generally just being thoroughly uninspired. I was a journalist for 4 years and I didn't feel as though I was able to make enough change in that area, trying to hold politicians to account when they didn't want to be held accountable, and we had a culture of that as well. So yeah, it was just a want to try and show that things could be done differently, I guess. In general, I don't think so. In New Zealand, there definitely are corrupt politicians, and there definitely is a level of corruption, and it is increasing whilst we lose transparency and accountability in the New Zealand political landscape. And that's reflected in our slipping down the transparency ratings internationally. Yeah.
You think
I think it speaks to bias, quite substantive bias, and I think it speaks a lot to the current legislation and inaction that we're seeing.
Okay, and around that also, what do you think about, so in the Canterbury district here, to create 1 litre of milk,
Yeah.
it takes 2,000 litres of water?
We absolutely need less cows. Yeah. And it's actually economically unproductive to have the amount of cows that we do on land in New Zealand. So from a purely economic perspective, it's ridiculous, but further from an environmental perspective, it's absolutely unsustainable. I don't really like the game of politics. I'm not in it for that. I'm not interested by it, and I will do my utmost to not be dragged into it. I guess.
What do you like about politics?
Yeah, I mean, what I like about it is the potential for change, and I do genuinely think that on the whole, it does attract people who do feel as though they can make positive change, whatever their version of positive change may be. Yeah, so I guess it would be the House of Cards version of politics. I have no interest in the game of politics or the ego. That's very boring and completely not the point. I did, and I mean, yeah, I did. We have a lot of policy similarities, and I believe that we also, I mean, the Green Party is an evidence-based party in terms of our policy. The thing that attracted me to the Green Party is our principles, which are in our charter, particularly those of social justice and appropriate decision making, ecological wisdom and non-violence, and that it recognises Te Tiriti as the founding document of New Zealand. I also appreciate our internal democracy, and that is something which is absent from the Opportunities Party.
Whether it be financial, which in turn result in potentially mental health issues, or otherwise mean that we're all really focused on our own worlds, which is again part and parcel of the way that the current economic system has individualised blame and responsibility for all of our individual circumstances. No longer the community per se exists. So yeah, I think the thing that annoys me the most is that the people who have the most to gain by voting statistically are the least inclined to vote. And again, I think it's because of those issues. They don't trust politicians and they are poor and hard-working. So I think the best way to address that, and this is the funny thing as well about the whole youth thing, the biggest youth movement in the States in the past few decades was a 70-plus-year-old dude called Bernie Sanders. You know, like it's not necessarily about being young. I think it is about proposing solutions and a vision. A guy called Max Harris has recently written a really great book called The New Zealand Project about that. I mean, my life experience is not the same as every young person's life experience, and I think in being aware of that, that potentially helps insofar as, I mean, my whole shtick from the beginning has been, yeah, I know I'm 22, I don't have all of the answers, but also any politician who stands up in front of you and tells you that they have all of the answers is lying to you. Nobody has all of the answers, and I think that what that kind of position fosters is an inability to go backwards or to critically analyse what they've done wrong or to apologise even, which is one of the terrible things about democracy in the 21st century, as every politician wants to pretend that they're infallible. I mean, I guess it helps that I'm down with the lingo, that kind of thing, you know, but beyond that, yeah, I mean, there's got to be some kind of psychology around relatability and otherwise, but I guess it's probably just more the fact that I care and I haven't had my naivety and idealism ironed out of me yet. I am nobody. Like, legit, I am nobody. I am just a person who stuck their neck out and was like, we need to do something! And here's kind of a general framework for how we can potentially do that. But anybody can do what I've done, and I hope that me being the random person who did it has shown that other people can do it. I don't believe that there's any such thing as objective truth. I believe that there is just subjectivity, and the best that we've got is a collective of subjectivity. And therefore, I believe that critical discussion and dissent and argument is really crucial to the foundation for our democracy. And I guess in that respect, it's super like what Plato and stuff idealised around democracy. Obviously, it's not direct democracy. But yeah, also ethics definitely has, I think, a lot about what's the right thing to do. That's a big question. Are you talking about the structure? Yeah. I mean, it could be by way of what that gentleman at the back suggested with regard to term limits. I think that the Constitution would go a really long way to changing the framing of New Zealand politics, whether it be actually properly entrenching and recognising T3D, but obviously also those climate targets, and ensuring that the government can't just at a whim pass legislation which completely curtails any human rights, as they currently can under Section 4 of the Bill of Rights Act. And I'd just like to see politicians with that political will, and I think perhaps Parliament needs to be a bit younger for that to happen. So the thing that we currently have in the I'm going to give everyone a little more lesson. So we've currently got three branches of government. You've got the legislature, the executive and the judiciary. Currently we do have a constitution per se in New Zealand that is found in numerous different documents, Te Tiriti o Waitangi being one of them, the Bill of Rights Act being another, and there's a multiplicity of others. And essentially what we've got at the moment is Parliament is supreme insofar as they can do whatever they like, including override our judiciary. So our judiciary is the court system. Section 4 of our Bill of Rights Act says that if there is any piece of legislation which is inconsistent with our Bill of Rights, that legislation is supreme. So our Bill of Rights is essentially redundant. So that's what needs to change in my mind. Parliament needs to be held accountable. And what that will do, if we hold Parliament accountable to entrenched legislation, then the court system will be able to actually, in a similar way to what happens in America, to say, actually, no, Parliament, you've gone awry, this is what you have to do. So citizens, in effect, have more power.
The major one is the Supreme Codified Constitution for New Zealand, and that needs to entrench government goals and accountability for climate action. It also needs to include goals and accountability for housing and a number of other things. Favourite politician? Julianne Genter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And least favourite?
I can't say that! Surely that's like...
All right, mentors.
Yep, mentors. Julianne, I've spoken to quite considerably since joining the Greens, and has been, she's incredibly knowledgeable and intelligent, and has helped me a lot. And I'm hoping for you, Janie Sage, as well, to be a bit of a mentor. But yeah, I mean, in terms of how I got to where I am today, the biggest one would probably be my father, with regard to how he taught me to question everything and to listen. Probably the course that I got the most out of at university, that I didn't actually go to the classes all too much, nor read much of the coursework, was alternative dispute resolution. And that came with a prescribed course book, textbook, whatever you call it, for getting to yes. It's a weird name for a book, but basically it's by the Harbour Negotiation Project, and looks at ways to settle conflicts and disputes, obviously peacefully, but in a creative way. So that would be kind of top of the list. In terms of books, for kind of... I read a lot when I was a kid, and I didn't read much when I was at university, which is quite unfortunate. But I mean, probably The Catcher in the Rye is, just in terms of the way that it was written. I know that there's a lot of people who have issues with the way that the protagonist was characterised, and kind of how he was and who he was. I guess if we're talking about childhood novels as well, then it probably has to be Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. All very boring, banal books. Crash is a film that always had an impact on me, in terms of the way that obviously all of the different storylines are There's so many different perspectives and characters, and speaks to the fact that we as humanity are kind of all connected. Then 1984 as another book on the top list, just insofar as it was one of the first dystopian novels that I ever read. Yeah, and obviously speaks to human nature and our follies.
Yeah, I had to go with a party that aligned with my value system, and again, because I'm not coming at this from the position of wanting a career out of politics, I want change out of politics, the Greens are the place for me. So one of the biggest things that I personally want to achieve, and this isn't necessarily Green Party policy, but I want a constitution. I want a Supreme Codified Constitution for Aotearoa New Zealand. And one of the things that definitely probably should be in there is potentially something like a term limit, because I think that as soon as a politician is in there for too long, they definitely do become really insular thinking, and they cannot see what they're doing objectively. There's definitely a lot of examples of that currently in New Zealand Parliament. Yeah. So kind of what I've been saying to everyone, and this is probably a really terrible idea given what might come out in 10 years' time, but I've kind of given myself 10 years. So yeah, I mean, I want to be there as long as I feel like I can make a meaningful difference, and as long as I can see things objectively and still.
On cannabis, support full legalisation. Yep, and that is Green Party policy.
Okay.
Yep.
100%.
100% legalisation, yes. Obviously, it depends what the framework would look like with regard to legislation as to how that would be implemented. Not 100% insofar as it's available for every man, woman and child. There would obviously still be an R18 label, and we need to figure out how we would fit that into the smoke-free by 2020 vision as well. But we support legalisation, yeah, as opposed to decriminalisation, because that leaves gangs in the picture.